Right. Antonio, welcome to Big Conversations by Ordinary People. Really, it's been an honor to bump into you at the African Climate Summit. You have been very hospitable. You're almost like a Uganda. Ugandans are known for being hospitable. But usually, what happens with this podcast is the guest introduces themselves. So I pick some context from their introduction on how to have a conversation. So please, Antonio.
Um, my name is Antonio Braizeniv. Though my friends in Uganda, because I've been there before, know me as Lamb Juice. So, yeah, I run a company called Santo International, and we are here for Africa Climate Summit. Basically, of course, to green the planet.
Yeah.
I think, apart from that, maybe we could be able to unpack more of who I am as we proceed with the conversation.
All right. So, to you, what does this African Climate Summit mean to you and to whatever you're trying to achieve?
If I become a little more personal about this, I'm from the private sector. I'm not actually in the NGO space. I'm not an implementing partner outside. So, and also important to note is my country has taken a little much more steps ahead in terms of coming up with responses that would want to remedy the climate change concerns. So from my end, Africa Climate Summit is very timely because it's going to allow me to be able to have an easy conversation with the private sector community. Because whereas the world is discussing climate change, whereas the government is discussing a tree restoration program, the private sector also needed to be able to understand their space in this whole conversation. So what I am doing and why this is important, or for me what this implies, is that it's easy for me now to knock private sector doors and be able to start having a conversation about the role of private sector in tree restoration.
Yeah. All right. So take me through your idea of climate change, really, and what that means to the ordinary Kenyan, say, who's just seeing this happen.
Well,
and the benefit and maybe the challenges as well.
I think what is critical to note, and maybe if I could just localize the concern.
Exactly.
In COP27, the president of Kenya committed that we as a country will grow 15 billion trees towards a response to mitigate climate change concerns. And of course, also to address the carbon footprint, not just for our country, but also to leverage on the same to be able to support the West, who are known to be the biggest culprit.
Yeah.
And the bulk of those trees that ought to be planted according to the presidential directive will be done by government institutions and majorly in public forests. What has interested me about the entire conversation and what I believe can become a localized approach is that we need to then also rally the general population toward also involving in growing trees. We do not need designated places to grow 100,000 trees. We need every homestead to just go and plant 3 or 10 trees. Okay. If in every homestead you planted 10 or 3 trees, then already we'll be improving the green cover or the forest cover. And how that benefits or how that relates also in my space is that I believe that the conversation around tree campaign should be cascaded down so that it is something that is driven by young people.
Okay.
Young people, because then this conversation becomes sustainable. Otherwise, if it remains with we, the youth, as it is said, and then with the older generation or the government per se, you realize that in the next 10 years, there'll be a disconnect because the people who will be in leadership or who will be occupying these spaces will not be conversant on the engagement that we're discussing today.
So are you saying the young people in this case are a bit ignorant about climate change or not concerned?
They are not. It's not about ignorance. It's lack of involvement.
Okay.
You see, we have not created enough platform to allow the young people to be involved. Young people, when they are brought to the table, they're not brought to give solutions or to drive the conversation. They are brought to be told what has been decided upon. And young people with innovative ideas also are not given a platform and an opportunity because even accessing resources or funds that can allow them to actualize their ideas is something that has been very complex. So we have young people who are most entrepreneurial in terms of innovation and tech towards climate change or green entrepreneurship. But then there's a disconnect because these young people do not have what we call the statutory requirements to be able to then access resources. And again, maybe if you are following our local TV, yesterday they interviewed Kabushenga, who is a former MD of New Vision Group, about his farming. And what he was talking about is accessing funds for the farming sector, mostly is commercial, and commercial players don't actually want to give loans towards agricultural farming, rather against your homes or land. They don't allow you to, So that same concern also comes into climate change conversation. Young people have intellectual ideas that they want to execute. Unfortunately, financing for those becomes difficult process.
Yeah, yesterday our president was at the Uganda South Africa Trade Summit, where he pledged to support all people. Of course, trade comes in. Uganda being agriculture being the backbone of Uganda's economy, so he pledged to support coffee growers, and everyone really into production, right? He pledged to give them money, and Kapshenga is one of those people who has previously had the chance to access such funding. So right now, I really lay back a bit when someone like him. It's scary when someone like him can actually talk about the lack of funding for commercial farming. Yet he's been at the helm of getting things like this. So it really means that there's a big disconnect between the people that have funding, or maybe we have now I'm speaking in Uganda's case. Maybe there's been a lot of money misuse that people don't trust the economy, and because funding really works around trust. Someone gives you their money and they hope that you'll see through whatever plan you've seen through. What is your opinion of that?
I'm going to at least, I've not been so much in touch with what's happening in Uganda presently.
Yeah. But okay, you can just generalize it here in Uganda, in Kenya. How easy is it for you to get financing for, say, for production?
Well, Kenya, we've come up with very many innovative models. Unfortunately, you are not able to measure because you will hear the government mention a colossal amount of money that have been allocated towards either youth fund or youth enterprise or agriculture for that matter. Like right now, we have had an ambitious initiative on a fertilizer program where we have discounted costing. I know here in Uganda, you really necessarily don't need much fertilizer.
Yeah.
But then again, the cost of fertilizer still is very high, making it inaccessible to most farmers. What I would say is that numbers are flashed on TV all over, but we are not able to authenticate those numbers. So it will be difficult to be able to give a concrete position regarding investment financing for farming or agriculture for that matter, considering that we are not able basically to qualify, or rather to verify those figures if they're genuine, or if even they were accessed by genuine farmers for that matter. What I could tell though is young people, and mostly Kenyans, will become very resilient in the sense that given that we recognize that accessing resources have been very tricky, however much the state has committed to support the goals that we have, people have managed to define other ways of just being innovative. So you realize that the food security that we don't have food security as such, but the food that we're able to enjoy, or rather we're able to get the yields, comes from ingenious effort by ordinary Kenyans. It's for the first time with the president that we have today that we are seeing a deliberate effort to support farming. And we hope that this is something that will be constant, continuous, and maybe we'll be able to bear more fruits of this.
Yeah, but Kenya is a very big economy in Africa. I am guessing that stands on the fact that you're producing a lot and exporting that too, which is a plus for the farmers.
Yeah, we are, but we're not producing food. We're producing other things. You find that the land that is used in farming food has shrunk over time. We either are doing coffee, tea, and we're doing other things, or flowers and sort of food. So
I never really thought about it that way. Yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah, so we farm, but we don't farm food. Okay. We instead rely on Uganda and other countries to be able to give us food.
Would you state in your opinion, what the role technology is playing in climate change right now, from how you observe things?
Well, maybe I should just point this. I'm new in the space of climate because it has become a global concern, and it is important that everyone steps in to be able to see how they can impact change. So to that end, I could say I'm very I'm not that much conversant, but I know that there's a lot to do with the blockchain. That a lot of guys have come up with new technology that is going to be able to make things easier. I also know when we talk about technology in environment, we've talked about electrical cars or motorbikes. Also, we're looking at solar energy. Those are also innovations that, when embraced, then people are able to a large extent, reduce their carbon footprint.
Do you think in the future we will have carbon-free Kenya?
Yeah, Kenya, we have an ambitious plan to achieve that. I've seen several companies, in fact, the private sector, who have been so much excited in understanding how they can also be able to start engaging in investment in carbon credits.
Yeah.
Basically, then it means that to a larger extent, they are looking at it as an investment portfolio where you can actually recoup some money. So to that end, I feel that Kenyans are becoming more aware, and Kenyans love ingenious ways to raise capital or funds. So I think Kenyans are going to embrace this. And there's a lot of large arable land that maybe could be used.
So in your opinion, how do we get the young people really focused and involved? Do you have any rough ideas where you feel like this could work if it's done this way?
Yeah, for starters, the president wants to plant 15 billion trees. The people who have been asked to plant these trees, or rather who have been given directive in terms of performance contracting, are government institutions majorly, and then they are calling upon Kenya. They can't force you to plant unless there's a lot of awareness creation that has been initiated. So the best I could tell is learning institutions offer us the biggest manpower that can be used or utilized to plant the trees. So if there's a framework where we can have state institutions collaborate or partner with schools, then that can be achieved. Important to note again is in the syllabus, which for Kenya, we have transitioned from 844 to competency-based curriculum. There's necessity to be able to integrate young people into environmental conservancy.
What's the difference? First of all, what's the difference between the syllabi?
The previous system that we had necessarily did not encourage young people to be hands-on. Okay. Rather, we were all about books and looking for white-collar jobs. Okay. The current curriculum we're transitioning to is one that is trying to be able to literally help young people to physically know how to engage with things that either it's using your hand or involving in practical solutions, maybe it's STEM, sciences for that matter. This in itself, for instance, environment is something that has become integrated. There's need to be an allocation for young people to be involved in climate change engagement or environmental conservancy, which means going to a farm or going somewhere to plant trees. So to a large extent, if we use that model where we do maybe tripartite collaborations between state institutions and learning institutions, then young learners can be integrated in this environmental conservancy engagement. And to a larger extent, the young people that I know, they would be so excited to be able to experience something else. Some people don't even have touched soil. They've never touched soil. Some modern schools in the city like Nairobi don't even have land where they can plant trees. So having an intentional program where they are now involved. For rural areas, it's easy because you could give every young learner 2 or 3 trees to go back home and plant. Probably indigenous ones that are also fruits.
So back in our country, we have companies like, let's say, one MTN that are coming up and encouraging people to plant trees and adding value. And you shared with me some ideas you think they would take. And this is, I think, another opportunity for us to just discuss that and see to it. I really feel like what you shared with me makes a lot of sense. Well, in terms of community development and also really adding value.
Yeah, because every time we have resources, which are of course scarce, to support climate change response or climate change action, it is imperative that we stagger the impact so that it's not just investment to a particular individual, but investment that touches into the lives of all the communities. In fact, the conversation based on another side forum that I attended was that we need to move from investment focus to impact focus. So what I think one MTN could do is to find an approach that not only impacts private landowners, but also leverage on institutions of learning that are coexisting around that space. Having them involved in growing the trees, having them involved in terms of creating awareness for environmental conservancy will also mean that not just the limited resources used toward planting trees in those spaces that would work, but even in some individuals will, on their own interest, be able to seek other alternative financing or from their own homes to be able to also plant trees from the other side, as opposed to having isolated interventions in large tracts of land. We can have a staggered process where a lot of community players are also involved in participating in that.
Well, it's quite interesting. Now, you as Antonio, we're going to divert a little bit away from the climate summit, but we'll conclude with just the summit. We'll conclude with what is that one thing you've picked from this summit that you feel like, yes, it should be amplified a lot? Maybe a conversation from all the different exhibitions or from all the different tents that have been here. What's the highlight for you?
I think every company, especially industrial companies, and even mainstream companies that are existing in our own countries, forget Western powers, Western countries, should be able to take their time to establish their carbon footprint. What is the impact of their day-to-day operations towards the climate and the environment? Once that has been determined, then what efforts can be put in place, even if it means adopting a hybrid intervention to allow everybody to reduce on the
carbon print.
If that is achieved, to a large extent, you realize just by embracing new technology in itself, we can be able to achieve almost 75% reduction. Then the other 25%, we could now adopt use of renewable energy, or we could start planting trees. Because trees now we have to plant. Every other institution.
When you're moving from Kisumu, say, to Nairobi, right, you're going to see a lot of green, a lot of trees. And don't you feel like as Africa, we have very little contribution to the carbon print, and a lot of more work should be done from the Western world? And then I feel like now it feels like the involvement is more like a masquerade from them not to do their part. Because I feel like for us, our print, we are still really a green world this side. What's your opinion on that?
Well, whereas what you say is true, but that kind of argument is dangerous. Because that kind of argument makes us unaccountable. And we don't account to the West. We account for
ourselves. Yeah.
When the climate shuts down by 2030, if it was like now the way they say in India, if they don't stop production of plastic and using plastics, if they don't clean their water system, by 2030 they'll never have fresh water. If we as Africans continue apportioning blame and saying the West are the ones with the burden for carbon footprint and ours we are, then when the world starts shutting, you won't shut on their own side. The entire world will shut. Whereas we could still be having a green environment, or rather our carbon print is very limited or less. I don't think that in itself gives us the luxury to continue sitting back.
I hear you.
What we should do is based on the Nairobi Declaration. We need to just soldier on and ask them to pay. And that pay they should be paying up. It shouldn't be lip service.
Okay.
That could become a revenue stream for Africa.
Yeah.
Africa should be paid handsomely for doing the right thing, as opposed to sitting back and saying it is you who are at fault.
I say that.
Yeah.
So how in this case, how would that payment work? How
that payment could help the many unemployed Africans. 70% of the African youth are.
How will we be paid in this case?
They've got mechanisms in place. Of course, the point is now that's why we do the carbon credit. You compute how much of I don't have the exact word, but you could compute how much as a country are we moving towards carbon sequestration. Is it sequestration?
Yes.
Then we get paid that money as a country. And as a country, when that money comes here, the people who have grown trees, if they are private investors, they ought to be paid. If corporate companies had invested 500,000 trees somewhere, they should be paid. And those monies also. So the money comes to a country, yes, but it cascades down to who invested. If it's government land, like the forest, for instance, now the initiative, then the money goes to the government. And the government uses that money to cushion taxpayers. They do the roads so that they don't continue inflating taxes left and center. They imagine taxation any other day.
Yeah.
That's how it will benefit.
Now,
and you see, if African countries or particular countries start benefiting, then others will be able to ape. A time would come when, as a country, would be able to even pay up all unemployed lot. Because the reason why our young people are not employed is because opportunities to create jobs has not been there.
Yeah.
So the present government should be able to raise money from whichever means it is, even if it's carbon credits, resources, and be able to give allowances to these people.
I hear you. I hear you. That is something valid. I hope the governments can listen through this and do something about it. Now, you are diverting away from the summit, really. Thank you for those views, Antonio.
Yep.
We've recently shared that you've lived in Uganda for some time.
Yep.
How would you compare? And I know Kenya is your home. How would you compare the standard of living here and in Uganda for someone that has studied in Uganda for a very long time and lived there and worked there as well? How would you compare the two standards of living? And what's your experience like living in Uganda? I want my Ugandan friends to listen to this, and a lot of them that know you to know that whether they did you bad, that you do not like our country, or okay, do not like is a heavy word, but yeah, how would you compare standards?
Well, actually, given my time in Uganda, over 15 years,
yeah,
has made me reach a point where it's difficult to tell if you'd say I'm Kenyan or actually I feel there are times I feel more Uganda. In fact, even now, there are moments when I believe I can unlock more doors in Uganda than I can in Kenya.
How so?
What I mean is,
you have seen more opportunity that side?
I have more contacts in Uganda than I've had in Kenya. And I have so many contacts in Kenya.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I have so many contacts. But still, in Uganda, I find Uganda as a very accommodating country. The people are awesome. I have my family there. After living there 15 years, obviously you expect me to be having family there. I have a child in Uganda. So if you ask
so you're basically Ugandan.
No, I am Uganda, not basically. I am Uganda.
Yeah.
Friends, family, and everything that I am is thanks to Uganda. Uganda shaped who I am today. My thinking is Ugandan. The English I speak is Ugandan. The intellect I enjoy because I was in Uganda in O-level, A-level, my undergraduate in Makerere University. Then I worked in a university and a media house. I did some small comedy, stand-up comedy while in campus. So I literally honed all my skills in Uganda. So everything I'm even doing here is thanks to Uganda. Yeah.
So how would you compare standards of living anyway? Between, of course, economies differ. Kenya is such a big economy. No lie, that's on record. But yeah, maybe just in your opinion,
I like Uganda. Yeah. I like Uganda for a couple of things. One is when it comes to, and it's important to know that food is very essential. Food is the fuel that keeps a man going. Yeah? So Uganda offers a variety that allows its people to feel cushioned. In Kenya, you could die of hunger and your next neighbor is having a party or a wedding or there's surplus of food. In Uganda, I don't remember that. In Uganda, there's food. You will get something. Yeah?
You'll eat.
You will eat.
I see that.
You might fail to work for a year, but you will eat. In Kenya, you stay away from work for a week, you will die.
Now, there's this conception. I've been here for really some short time, right? But all my friends, even when I was just coming, I was talking to a few people, they kept saying Kenya is expensive. Do you believe that as well?
Yeah, it is. Kenya is damn expensive. Kenya is damn expensive because half of our people are dishonest. People will not post for you items the way you want it to be. People will not post it well. People will just, as in, everyone looks for an opportunity to dispossess you of your wealth. If you want to board a vehicle, they will increase the fare. If you want, everybody just want an extra thing. You park your car. Driving is even expensive in this country than anywhere else. Because you don't just fuel your car. Every single place you park your cars, you can even pay parking, but you still have to bribe somebody or pay someone else to watch over your car. It's just a risk to be in this space. And I don't know.
What solutions do you think can be done?
I don't want to make it such a way that it's like I'm painting.
Yeah. No. But you're speaking about the reality you're living in.
My country and Uganda. The Uganda I know anyway. I think here we need to come back to planet Earth. We have a little moved so up there. We've made life impossible for each other. The farmer who sells mboga has inflated the price. The guy who sells drugs, the farmer has inflated the price. The people working in government offices want. So you realize that everybody has made life so expensive. So now the cost of living is high because everybody is inflating the cost of whatever they're trading.
I'll tell you for a fact, this is what a normal Ugandan would say about Uganda as well. now. Like it feels like it's a jumble in Africa. Like how do we get systems to work, right? The only place where I feel like maybe there's some sort of difference, some sort of fairness is Kigali. And Kigali is designed in a way that it's basis on structured development, right? It's a supply nation. The government creates stuff and then people can feed into that stuff. But Kenya, Uganda is demand basis. The people, what you need, what you need will be expensive for you because that's what you need. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't want to talk about Kigali, but what I can say generally about
East Africa.
East Africa
Yeah.
is that
How do we get systems to work? That's like that.
no, the systems are working. It's just a few rough edges.
Okay, me, I feel in Uganda systems are not working. And I boldly say that this is not my first time to say it in podcast. I have hosted a few member of parliaments and I've told them that that's my opinion. And some of them agree that, yeah, systems are failing to work because of the people. Like, it seems like it's us, the people, that are like that. Because we are still our government, right?
And you see, you actually answered yourself about the question to do with systems. There's no system, there is us. You and I,
Yeah.
and the person behind the camera over there, and the guys watching this. We are the system. So tomorrow when you leave your home as you're going out, how do you want to conduct business? If you have a personal reflection and decide that you'd want to do it on a positive note, and I do the same, then already the system starts working. If tomorrow you go out there and somebody is going to force money out of you illegally, and you refuse to give them that money and say, you know what, I'll kill you, I'm not going to jump the line or jump the queue, then the system starts to work. If you are driving on the streets and there's a beggar every other day and you keep giving them a shilling, whereas it's good to help, you are the ones failing the system, encouraging beggars to be on the street. There should be a system that is responsive enough to know that those guys need to be taken somewhere if they need help. And if they are masquerading that they are beggars and they are thieves, they need to be arrested. So that you have cities that are structured to work.
True. I agree that. What do you think is the future of Africa? From the times you've lived, from the places you've traveled, how do you envision the future of Africa? Do you feel like we have so much potential? We keep getting that. Africa is full of potential. Africa is full of potential. But is that how you feel?
I had a lecturer in Makerere University called Nyanja Musoke. And a year after I'd finished campus, I met him just around one day again. And he was like, how are you, Antonio? You doing fine? You're still in the country? I said, yes, I'm here, I'm working. You had very nice ideas, eh?
Yeah.
Those ideas, you had very good potential. Are you still having potential or you have already actualized them? This narrative about African potential is BS.
Yeah, I agree. It's BS. That's how I feel.
We can't keep engaging at a space of potential 60 years after independence.
Thank you. That is my exact opinion on this.
So that lecturer once told me, I don't know if they became a professor at some point, Nyanja Musoke.
Yeah.
Or Mambusi and Mbesa. So it was not Nyanja, it was Mambusi and Mbesa.
I'll look out for that.
He said, Antonio, you have very good ideas that if you're not careful, they remain ideas. So same concerns, sentiments with potential. African potential. If we are not actualizing them anytime now, 60 years later, then we will not actualize them. You see an opportunity, you crack it. I see an opportunity, I crack it. Right now, I'm thinking that climate change is an opportunity for us. The next billionaires will be farmers. Let's grow trees.
Yeah.
If you want to make money, you need to sell food or technology. And then there'll be nothing like potential. All you'll have is the reaping from impact.
Well, the guys that are richest right now are into production, right? The Warren Buffets, the Bill Gates are into technologies, the Mark Zuckerbergs. Well, it feels like we are not producing. Okay, apart from the few people from here, the Sudils, who's this guy in Nigeria, Dangote. Dangote is into production. Yeah, I think it's also food.
Just grow food. Don't crack it. Just grow food. People need to eat every day. Whether there's inflation or no inflation, people need to eat. People eat. Even people who want to procreate want to eat food afterwards, and after they need food. As in, you just get to grow food somewhere. If you're growing food, you're gonna crack it. And then people fall sick. So then healthcare, no? And then technology, innovation is important. And Africa is a hub because if you look at most Western countries and you look at Kenya,
Yeah.
Kenya is moving at a fast pace because of innovation in the tech space. You know, when you look at cable
Yeah.
in Kenya, we are more advanced than most Western countries.
True. True.
M-Pesa came from here, the mobile money.
Yeah, but we also have mobile money, right?
You do have
MTN.
our mobile money. MTN, Safaricom, same sister companies. It all began here.
It began, no. Mobile money is Ugandan. MTN mobile money is Ugandan. I can put my hand
The
there.
word mobile money is Ugandan, but
The system of transfer.
Technology started
Did it?
here.
People take credit for it from that side. On big conferences, MTN yesterday. In fact, yesterday, Mbira was saying it at the summit. So I'm going to go again fact
You know
check
something
that.
interesting?
Yeah.
I was in one of the forums I was attending a side plenary session on financing for green environment, green planet. A very senior person from Tanzania came here and said the way they are doing, they're the first institution, I don't want to remember which institution it was, in Eastern Central Africa that are doing an ambitious investment in tree growing. And I looked at him and we clapped for him, yet we know it's bullshit. That thing has been done here in Kenya already. There's a company in Kenya that has been doing a 30 million tree campaign. Actually, yeah, it's 30 million, and they're saying they've done 22. But they're not shouting about it because that's not their biggest signature project. They have a bigger one they're making noise about. So they didn't figure that they needed to scream over that. So every time people claim credit for some innovation, maybe it's because they're thinking they're speaking to Ugandans in a closed environment. We're in a global world. People can Google and find out information.
I agree. I agree. And people really should take note of that. That people have smartphones on them.
When somebody's talking these days, just take your phone. The moment they say whatever they say, just ask Google or ChatGPT or some AI application, and they'll tell you, no, that's bullshit. Okay, they won't say the word bullshit.
Yes, but they'll show you the facts.
They'll give
you the alternative facts.
True.
Now, you as Antonio, what legacy are you trying to build and leave behind? From all the years you've been on Earth, what do you make? Okay, before we go to the legacy, what do you think about life in general, really? And this doesn't have to be about climate change or what. What do you think about life? What have you learned from life?
I've learned.
And what can you say about living, really?
I think we have been taking this life too seriously. And I'm talking about this because of the incidences of mental health that are running in the country.
Yeah.
And when you ask me about what is life, I'm just thinking 2 days from now, we'll be celebrating, or rather, we'll be marking a suicide prevention day on Sunday.
Yeah.
And because of social media, the general population, not just young people, are under pressure to make it. Everybody thinks that there's certain monies or certain lifestyle, certain successes that you must register before you actually can consider that life has kicked in. I think life is not that difficult or serious. The Western civilization that we have embraced as Africans is what is giving us the pressures of how to define what life is. Our four grandfathers before colonization and civilization lived very simple lives. They used to go to the farm and hunt rabbit or hare. They lived in some caves that was carved there. And they used just to go and bring food and they stay with their children and they just bring forth their kids. And their kids also will do the same thing they're doing and they just live their life. And life was going on fine. It is until we were told that there's a flat iron, there's a TV, you can buy a car, that now is really chasing, it became a rat race. So you buy a car, then you need to fuel it. So you're spending your entire life fueling a vehicle, you're buying electricity, buying data. So this life that we are living here is a prison, man. Life is supposed to be very simple, not to be serious. Life is supposed to be just getting some small space.
And content, right?
And be contented.
Yeah.
That's not happening anymore. That's
why I feel like there's so much. People have all these things, the phones, the Instagrams.
We've lost it. Right now, iPhone 15 is coming out.
That man is already telling me he wants to buy it.
Is there a PG
No,
parental guidance.
no, not
Yeah.
at all. This is big conversation. So we even swear on the podcast. Really.
Yeah, because since we had the news that iPhone 15 is coming, girls have been told to shave, you know? It's not fair, man.
And
That
it's only
pressure,
fans.
that pressure, man, it's not fair. It's not supposed to be that hard, man. Life should be simple, you know? If you just get a 4-bedroom house, if you're a family guy with 2 kids, get your 1 car or another one for your spouse. And if you get 2 again, now you'll separate because you are always drifting apart. They're always driving them.
My uncle told me that.
You
My
get
uncle told
1
me
car
this.
from work, you go and
But you have
pick
some
car.
time together.
You
Yeah.
pick her, or whoever is going farthest drops the other and goes the other. You are always going to be together. You have 2 vehicles, you have a big house, you have another village home. Before you know it, you separate it because one is managing the whole part of the village, another one is this side, this one is driving with our girlfriends there, you are this other end, and then and you just want more and more. You're accumulating, and that's why some people cannot leave power. Just need to get contented with life, and that should be very simple.
Just like us, when you talk about not living power, I'm Ugandan. I am first-hand experience to that. But yeah.
That guy is my friend. Leave him alone.
How do we? Yeah, he's a good president. How do we? How do we?
I like that.
What
guy.
type of legacy
I like that guy.
are you leaving behind? Why do you like our president? No, before we go to legacy. In 1 minute.
President is real. I've met him a couple of times. I thanks to Major
IGP,
IGP Kale Kaihura. I've met the president a couple of times, both State House, Rokitura, and other. I remember one time we sat and he was asking which course I do. Told him I was doing development studies. Like, no, those are useless courses. That guy is real. I like him for 2 things. He's one person who is a realist.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to unpack issues. There's a disconnect when it comes to his promises. Is it 21 or it was 11 points?
Yeah, 11 points.
1986. And now I know that is a concern for you as natives.
Yes.
But then generally, if you compare him across Africa, he's somebody who has been very consistent on a number of issues at a global level, at a Pan-African level. But of course, there's no person who is loved at home, not even Jesus Christ. So you have limitations, and I know that that's a concern, especially being that he's the only leader who brought peace to your country. Transitioning power from him to the next leader is very important, and he's squandered opportunities to make that happen. You get the drift?
Okay.
But besides that, where he's become a letdown, generally he's an amazing guy. He has a lot of command in the region, and he's one of the person who can help the West sober up if he wanted to.
I think he's trying to achieve that. Now, what sort of legacy are you trying to leave as a human, you, as Antonio? Have you thought about that in general? Like, this is the legacy I want to leave on Earth?
I think I just want a world where people are contented. I want to leave it at that. I want a world where there's contentment.
Mm-hmm.
Want to see Kenyans happy. I don't want to see the next motorist cussing at another motorist. We are such a tensed up community.
Yeah, I've realized that in the Uber guy that has been driving me around. It's cussing everywhere, like you pass. There's no... But somehow, I still prefer being in Kenya because in Uganda it's worse. The career is too much. Guys are happy and hospitable, but yeah, the career is too much. But
that career is part of your identity. Embrace it.
That's
what makes
that's who you are.
Uganda.
I agree.
Just the way in Kenya also we have things that makes us who we are.
Really, Antonio, this has been short and precise, but thank you. I know we are going to do so much. We're going to get on projects together, and yeah, I will definitely get time, come back, have a more brief thing that we